Hello, this is RonMan Gaming. Today's question is, can I review the video game Double Dragon? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video game, only speculating about what could be happening in a video game like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will not put the link in the description below because I don't have Patreon. First, I'll look at the background of this video game, move on to my review, then offer my analysis. I hate myself. Double Dragon is a beat-em-up that was developed by Technos Japan and published by Taito for the arcades in 1987. Double Dragon proved to be such a huge success that we received many iterations of the game for many different platforms. Now, my first experience with Double Dragon was back on the NES. Back when I was a kid, I liked this game a lot. I thought the music was good and it was fun beating people up. I remember one time when my mom came home, she had a box of NES games, and Double Dragon was in there. I had no idea what it was, never heard of it. I popped it in my NES and I was pleasantly surprised. I thought it was tons of fun. Now, it is a lot of fun, but it also has a lot of problems, and we'll get into that. And I do just want to give a quick shout out to my buddy Scornerd. He actually asked me to review Double Dragon. He's a really good artist. Check him out over on his Facebook page at Scornerd's Corner. You can see all his artwork there. Please like his page and tell him that RonMan sent you. Double Dragon is a traditional beat-em-up which contains only 4 levels, or missions. There is a 2-player mode, but sadly it happens to be 2-player alternating, so you will not be bashing bad guys together. At the time, the developers couldn't figure out how to have more than 3 moving sprites on the screen at once, so a 2-player co-op mode would have made the game far too easy, with both players beating up on the one-at-a-time single enemy. There is a 2-player versus mode where players 1 and 2 fight each other. It's funny because each player can't choose their own character, they both always have to play as the same character. This mode is neat to check out, but only for about 8 seconds. I'll assume that you'll play this alone, as playing with someone else is not worth it. Therefore, you play as Bimmy and you only have 3 lives and 0 continues to beat the game. When you die, you get sent back to the beginning of the stage or your last checkpoint. Yeah, there are checkpoints throughout the levels. At the start, you'll only have access to punching, kicking, and headbutts. As you attack enemies, you'll earn 2 types of points. The points on the left side of the screen are experience points. The amount of experience points you earn depends on the type of attack that you do. So for example, punching earns 20 points, kicking earns 15 points, and some weapons offer points, but not all weapons. Yeah, it's weird how the developers decided how this works. Anyway, for every 1,000 experience points, you'll level up. Your current level is represented by the hearts at the bottom of the screen. As you earn levels, you'll gain access to a wider moveset, which will definitely increase your odds of survival. Many of the later moves do more damage to enemies. As I mentioned, there are only 4 levels. Double Dragon is actually a very small game, but the difficulty can make it feel much bigger and longer than it really is. My advice for you is never punch anything. Punching can earn more points than kicking, but kicking should absolutely be your main attack. The range is invaluable. When you earn the hair grab knee technique, use that as much as you can, although it can be tricky to execute. Later, you'll learn the elbow, which is the strongest attack in the game, but kicking will still be your main method of raining the pain. The first 2 missions are really quite easy, but starting at mission 3, the difficulty really spikes. All of the enemies begin to level up with you, which means they all do more damage. But that's not the only reason for the increase in difficulty. There are many really cheap sections, like the bridge in mission 3. It's so easy to get hit into the water. When you're in the caves, your biggest obstacle will be falling stalactites. Or how about the wall in mission 4? When these bricks pop out and hit you, they do crazy damage, and it's hard to avoid the bricks because they don't appear to have any rhyme or reason. They just seem to shoot out at random. On one of my playthroughs, I actually made it to mission 4 with all of my lives. I'm sure you can guess where this story is going, but of course, this wall ended my run. I was so annoyed. You know, I really do like this game, but this is just so unfair. Just imagine playing a beat 'em up and the enemies that you are beating up are not the real danger. Rather, it's silly stage hazards. The bridge and the wall are the sections that I dread the most. Your beat-em-up skills could be amazing, but if your platforming skills are not great, you'll more than likely struggle with this game. Speaking of the controls, I do think they're fine, but they're clearly not meant for platforming. All the beat-em-up stuff works really well, but the bridge and the cave are tricky. Inside the cave, you'll actually have to jump across moving platforms. It can be really frustrating when you die because you you miscalculated a jump. And remember, you only have 3 lives and no continues. And this is all before the stupid wall in stage 4. Also, I'd like to point out a weird design choice. In mission 3, you can unknowingly loop the stage. When you get to the double Abobo fight, once you kill both of them, you're supposed to enter the cave. But that's somewhat counterintuitive, because up until this point, you only had to enter one door, and it was painfully obvious that you had to enter that door. So why would you suddenly think to walk through these openings? And there's also 2 of them. Not to mention, if you walk to the right, the game will happily scroll along. How stupid. They should have made it straightforward with only one way to go. Once you're in the cave, again, it'll continue to loop unless you go through the correct doors. Anyway, the music and sound effects are great. I love the Double Dragon theme. The graphics are great too. The levels have some variation in their settings. The first 2 levels are set within the city, but you'll get to experience a forest and a cave just in level 3 alone. Double Dragon looks and sounds great. And that's all there really is to say about Double Dragon for the NES. It really is a great game. The only real problem is the inflated, cheap difficulty. Now don't go anywhere yet because I have a few other versions of Double Dragon. So as a bonus, let's take a look at Double Dragon for the Sega Master System and the Sega Genesis. Starting with the Sega Master System version. The first thing you may notice with this version are the visuals. Do they look better than the NES version? Honestly, I don't know. I mean, maybe. They're certainly different. As far as the music goes, in my opinion, it sounds worse in this version. Another area where the Master System version dropped the ball is with the presentation. In the NES version, each mission is introduced with a nice, albeit simple, screen along with a catchy jingle. What the heck is Grigger? I've always wondered that. Does anyone honestly know what that means? Leave it down in the comments if you do. Anyway, in the Sega Master System version, it's just a quick text. Also, the heads-up display is not as impressive. You'll notice that it doesn't tell you which level you are. Well, that's because you don't level up in this version. We have all the same levels as the NES version, but the layouts here are all completely different. It almost feels like a different game. Almost, but not quite. When you die, you get to respawn right where you died. And you also have multiple continues. The Sega Master System version is still pretty tough though. For example, it seems like fighting enemies is more challenging overall. Maybe this was to make up for all the extra lives. When I would try to punch or kick anyone, it was always a disaster. It felt like jump kicking was the safest option, but even then it's not perfect. A lot of the time, after you jump kick, the enemy is already punching you in the back of the head before you've even had a chance to move. Although it could just be my limited experience with the Sega Master System version. I'd say the Master System version is a downgrade over the NES, if not for this one thing. The best feature of this version is the 2-player co-op. Yeah, you can actually play through this with a friend. That alone might be what makes you choose this version over the NES. Now, before we end the video, let's take a quick look at the Genesis version. The Genesis version looks and sounds a lot better than the previous 2 versions. We have the same 4 missions, but again, they're all laid out differently. It seems to me that out of all versions featured in this video, Double Dragon for the Genesis is the most forgiving. You're able to choose how many lives and credits you get. I was actually able to beat this on my first attempt. I'm sure I don't need to mention this, but of course this iteration includes the 2-player co-op. Double Dragon for Genesis is okay. I honestly thought it would be a lot better. It's only a minor step up from the NES version. In conclusion, Double Dragon is, it's good. It is far from the best beat-em-up you'll play, but not everything has to be perfect. Sometimes spending 20 minutes in a world is all you need. Each version is different enough that it's fun to check out, but my favorite version in the end is the NES version. What's your favorite version? Leave it down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.